She would get so mad. It would be the end of an episode, and she's like, I don't even know how I watched this. I don't even know what's going on.
Welcome to the Nerdnews podcast, starring Tyler Waltz.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Nerd News, and today I'm here with Val Werner. We're going to be talking about something that kind of gets on my nerves, but I understand the root argument for it, and that is anything original anymore?
Right.
So what would you say is like the most original thing that you've seen lately?
Lately?
Yeah, like, oh wow, I would have never thought about that, or it's a new premise or an idea.
I mean, Parasite.
Okay.
Was pretty...
Which one? Because I know of 3 things called Parasite.
Oh, the one that won the Oscar.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
right
the
on.
movie, yeah.
I've actually been reading a manga recently, manga for whoever's going to get upset about the pronunciation, called Parasite, where an alien is on Earth and it takes over a guy's hand. So he just has like an eyeball on his hand and it can take over his arm.
Oh.
It's very funny. It's very cool. But I've been reading that lately, so...
So it controls a person, or is it like Venom where he lives inside the person?
Lives inside, but can completely take over. It starts out with like just his hand.
Oh, okay.
Like his hand just starts doing weird stuff, and then it's his whole arm. And then he starts being able to turn his arm into other things. So it's like a body horror kind of thing. It's wild. It's wild. I love it. But Parasite was very good, because that was like a home invasion without the invasion. Or like extra invasion. Like, I don't know how you would describe it.
I think it was so unique, and I think that's why it got such a cult following. And like Squid Game.
Yeah,
right?
Squid Game was good.
That seems pretty original. There's not much else in like, in
recent history.
In entertainment, that strikes me.
I like Squid Game a lot because it felt like a remix of like the Battle Royale movies. Like, because Japan has... Everybody gave Hunger Games this big thing, right? Because they were like, oh my gosh, they're putting these people and they're battling. But that was a Japanese movie that I loved as a kid. So it was like, okay, even sometimes when you think it's original, it's kind of just like a respin of certain things.
Yeah.
Because I thought Squid Game was one of the best or most unique ways of doing that Battle Royale style of game. I thought that was excellent. Yeah. I'm excited for season 2. I'm curious how they're going to go with it.
When's it coming out?
I don't know. I haven't heard.
Ever.
They announced the Squid Game on Netflix.
Right.
Did you hear about that?
I saw about that, yeah.
So that's going to be funny. We're now making games of fictional games that's making fun of games.
The game show cannot be far behind if it doesn't already exist.
Yeah. I don't. Because the game show's coming out on Netflix. Like, they've done ads and stuff for it, so that's going to be crazy.
Well, like you were saying with Hunger Games, she admitted at one point she was watching that in the background at times while she was writing this show.
Oh, really?
She said the flip between that and I can't remember what war was going on at that time.
Oh, yeah.
But just those kinds of 2 things kept sticking in her head. So
yeah.
And
it is funny how that stuff like works out. It's also kind of weird that Japan is like really obsessed with like, what if kids were the ones doing the horrible things?
Right.
Like, almost everything Japan is like high schoolers doing horrendous things. But yeah, so originality, I've been thinking about it a lot lately because the new Spider-Man game came out. And it's funny to me because in the news, you're always hearing about XYZ, this is coming out. And there's this, it's not even like an ebb and flow anymore. It's like tidal wave versus tidal wave of people complaining, being like, oh my gosh, another Snow White, or they're just making a live action this, and there's and there's nothing original anymore, and we're just recycling and repeating and rinsing everything. However, I've played 6 Spider-Man games in my life. Never a complaint. Never. They're always masterpieces. They're always great. So it's weird how it's how you pick and choose what you're okay with recycling.
Yeah. I haven't seen the new Spider-Man game, but even just with the movie, there was so much new in the movie that it makes me excited for the game. Yeah. But then even then, like you said, is that movie original? I mean, it's based on decades of Spider-Man. So
you're talking about the Into the Spider-Verse with Miles?
Into the Spider-Verse.
Okay, cool. I wasn't sure if you were talking about that one or the live action with Tom Holland.
No.
Because the live action with Tom Holland was literally prefaced on, we're bringing in the other people.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and that's what the video game is based on, right? Is
No, so
it's not.
The video game is its own unique Spider-Man story.
Oh, okay.
So Spider-Man came out for the PlayStation 4, and it was like the best superhero game. Like it was so good. Like they nailed every piece of it when it comes to what you would expect in Spider-Man.
Okay.
And this is just the sequel to that one.
Oh.
And in between, they had a spin-off game for Miles Morales. So Miles got his own game in the middle, and this one has both of them in it. And yeah,
I don't know. That's a kind of a new take on.
Yeah. So they took what was good about the first one, what was good about Miles Morales, and then they just made both of them way better in a new game.
Yeah.
But how many Spider-Man games have there been? When Tobey Maguire was Spider-Man, there were a game for each of his movies. When Andrew Garfield, they had the Amazing Spider-Man games. Then they had like the Marvel spin-off games for like the GameCube and stuff. And now these Spider-Man games.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Don't you think though it feels like you're continuing on in the story when you've had all these video games and you're watching the story mature?
Yes, but how many times can I see Uncle Ben die? You know, like
well, like in the movie we saw how many times he died. Right?
Exactly. So it's like I'm gonna see relatively similar things getting cycled through, right? Yeah. Like how many versions of Green Goblin have I seen? How many versions of Rhino? How many versions of Mysterio? It's still the same thing. It's just, can they make it cooler than it's been done before?
Yeah.
Which I'm fine with. It's just funny to me that we're in these arguments of, is there anything original?
Yeah.
Yet everybody is just losing their collective mind over this new Spider-Man movie. And the new Saw movie came out. So we're on Saw 10.
Oh, God. Right.
And everybody is like, this is the best one. This is like second best to the original. And everybody's excited that it's back. But we all want to complain whenever there's a live action thing coming out because there's no originality.
I think it is hard to be original though.
Yeah.
I mean, even 200 years ago and then to now, we became obsessed with recording our experiences and our thoughts.
Yeah.
And then it just, rapidly escalated in the density of stories with the internet and the accessibility, and with originality, I just think the density of all of our stories. We have heard everything. Yeah. If you want to see if somebody's had an experience with a fake unicorn in the middle of the Grand Canyon,
it exists.
You're going to find it now. Then you can think it's the most crazy off the wall story that you've come up with.
Yeah.
And you're still going to find
Something.
it. And it's because we've recorded all of our experiences now. And I don't think, there's so many stories that are based on the Iliad, right?
Yep.
So have we ever wanted to be original? I think there are definitely people out there who say, I'm going to make a movie, like Parasite.
Yeah.
And it's going to turn everything on its head. And that's interesting for us to see when something's truly original. But I think there's such comfort in knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Or watching sitcoms and it's so predictable. Or, even when we reinvent a character, I loved it when they switched with the Hulk. I loved Mark Ruffalo's Hulk.
Okay. You're talking about Lou Ferrigno?
No, not Lou Ferrigno.
Okay, because that's my favorite Hulk, because that's what my dad and I watched.
Right. No, the Ed
Norton?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't like his too broody. It wasn't fun.
Yeah.
It wasn't as fun. And so I know I get made fun of by some of my more scholarly friends. They're like, why do you watch this shit, or why do you listen to, pop culture music? And it's like, there is a comfort,
Yeah.
to having it. And that's why I watch I watch Star Trek over and over again. I watch all of them at least once a year.
Yeah.
And it's because I don't know, it makes you feel good, you know? Yeah.
I get that. There's a video game from 2001 or 2003, because there was two of them. It's called Dark Cloud. Not a lot of people know about it, especially, it was relatively big in like the 2001, 2003. The only reason I have it is because my grandmother picked it up at like a garage sale, thinking it was like a Zelda game. But it turned out to be my favorite video game of all time. And I play that game once a year, and like they ported it over for the PlayStation 5, so I downloaded it. I'm currently trying to like 100% them in the modern like consoles.
Right.
And Resident Evil 4. I'll play those games at least for a little bit once a year, just to like get a little bit of that.
I just think you can find originality if you want to.
Yeah.
It's out there, but it is so annoying when they take something that and they just redo it. And I get the difference, animation versus live action, that there's some, how are they going to do this scene or that kind of mystery, but it's I'm surprised that Saw 10 is considered the best.
Yeah. Maybe not the best. I think it's like the second highest rated.
Yeah, okay.
But I also think it's because they brought back Tobin Bell.
Okay.
Who is Jigsaw.
Yeah.
Who technically died in the third movie.
So that's why they're excited about it.
I think so.
See, then the fans didn't want something new. They wanted...
Yeah, because it's a prequel.
Yeah.
It takes place in between the second and third movie.
Yeah.
Or first and second movie. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, it felt... Because here's the thing, especially with horror movies, there's 10 of them. They're not all going to be bangers.
They're not... There's no way they all can be considered good. But I think originality, too, for like nerd culture or whatever, it feels like we're trying to find... we're looking for originality because I think nerd culture used to be so much more obscure.
Yeah, and
now it's
niche.
And now it's just kind of, it's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But it's still hard to find originality.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, if you think about it, before Marvel became what it is, where there's a new movie every year, the people that were talking about Spider-Man in the 90s were people that read the comic books.
Yeah.
So how many people did that?
Well, Iron Man.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
a lot less than how many people went to go see the Spider-Man movie, right? Like that the audience just, I think after Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, I think that was the first hero movie that made it cool to be into like superheroes and stuff, because then everyone was talking about Willem Dafoe, and it was like cool to like Spider-Man.
It did. Spider-Man and Iron Man for me was where, when you were a kid and you were ridiculed for loving, comic books. Yeah. But now it just gave everybody this outlet, like you said, to like come out of the closet or whatever with your fandoms. But
because now there's like a hierarchy of nerds. Like I don't know how often you spend time around like nerd culture.
Yeah.
People like at card shops and stuff like that. Yeah. But there's like, if you say you're a nerd, it's almost like you're getting interrogated. It's like, oh, are you reading it, or are you just watching it? Or like if it's Magic the Gathering or something, it's like that. Did you read the lore? Did you when you watch, like
how deep cut, right?
It's infuriating.
That's how it used to be for people who said they liked certain kinds of music.
Oh yeah.
Like if you said you liked Led Zeppelin, they're like, oh, what's the album's name? Yeah. Name their 5 last album. You had to prove it, right?
Yeah.
But I'm a big Trekkie nerd.
Yeah.
So I think that's where people start to really ask you specific questions, like what planet was Data born on, and
what was it?
Well, I don't know. I can't remember it. Oh, it's probably in there somewhere. I just exposed you. That's not how I obsess about. Yeah. I really obsess about storylines, like instead of how many parsecs are in Star Wars, right? It's like it's not a thing. But I think with video games, like you're talking about with Spider-Man not being as original, I still think people are gonna pick the game apart. Not in a bad way. I just mean to be like, where's the callbacks or the fan service
and there's
in there? And that's not original either.
It's not. People love it because it's references. It's not what they've based the plot on and stuff like that.
Yeah. When do you think we were in our most original, like in recent memory? Like, was there more time that we were original, or
in recent memory? This is not recent memory for me. I was born in 95. Mm-hmm. But I feel like the explosion of original kind of happened in like the late 70s to throughout the 80s, because that's when the movie industry became a giant. Mm-hmm. So you were getting like Terminator and Alien and like all these different things that you could find more niche books and stuff on. But when it comes to pop culture and originality through stories, I think that's kind of where everything came from. And most everything that we do now is cycling back to pick pieces or like stones that weren't quite unturned. But you got semblances of.
Yeah.
But I think the early 2000s was also a pretty good time too.
Right.
Because we were
especially in video games.
Yeah.
So many, like Call of Duty and Halo coming out in that early 90s.
Yeah.
For me, I was like, well, we haven't seen anything like this. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what, but then, you know, what are we, 18 years on with Call of Duty?
Yeah.
Can you remember? Something like that. And so you do think, she's like, what more can I possibly see in Call of Duty?
Well, that becomes another question in originality as well. Because if you're borrowing premises, but you're doing something unique on it, does that count? Right? Because if you think about zombies, like zombies are the most oversaturated market.
I love zombies.
Me too. I love them. So I remember like Night of the Living Dead and all that kind of stuff. And then you started getting comedies like Shaun of the Living Dead, right? Or you've got 28 Days and 28 Weeks Later. And then more recently, you've got like Train to Busan. Every movie I just named are different types of zombies.
That's what I love about it. Like, you know, you've got World War Z and I Am Legend, action zombies. That's what I call them.
Yeah.
Right. And then,
I love that I think it was like the director or the producer for I Am Legend were like, we're actually not a zombie movie. They're actually vampires.
Oh, God.
And it's like, all right, buddy.
It's a zombie movie.
Like, it came out in the height of like zombie stuff. And you're like, nope, I'm different.
I always like watching The Walking Dead, which was really more a show about humanity and not the zombies. But
I love The Walking Dead.
Yeah, it's like those zombies. I just can't help but think, how hard can it be?
Yeah,
you know, how hard can unless you are mobbed by them.
Yes,
it's just it wasn't exciting to. That wasn't the exciting part about that show for me. It's like it was a secondary.
So the funny thing about The Walking Dead is, I fell off hard.
Yeah.
I used to like The Walking Dead so much that one of my first ever Gen Cons that I went to, they were holding a panel where it was called The Drinking Dead, which was like a Midwest. It was like a Midwest local obsession with the thing. And if you were able to answer 10 questions and get none of them wrong, you could be on their show.
What?
Yeah. And I got called and I did it. So the first ever podcast or anything like that I ever did was like a decade ago, where I got to do a guest appearance on The Drinking Dead, where they filmed it live in front of an audience.
Wow.
And we just broke down an episode of The Walking Dead.
So
but after the Negan arc, I just stopped caring. Oh, you hated Negan?
Yeah.
I liked him so much that after that, I did not care.
Oh, you mean you didn't want to see anything more?
Yeah.
See, for me, that's when I stopped watching, was Negan.
That's fascinating because he's my favorite. So what happened? What made you change?
I just thought I thought not as much of the story was over the top, but the actor played it.
Jeffrey Dean Morgan?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just, every time I saw him on screen, I'd go, ugh.
Really? That's so funny.
I'm not saying it wasn't good.
Oh, no. I'm not upset at all. Different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, but I was like, and I love him in the other stuff he's done, but I was just like, ugh. And maybe because it's so different from the other things he's done.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like watching, Ron Howard play a bad guy. I mean, that's never going to happen, right?
I gotcha. That makes sense.
But that's why I felt like, and I hated Lucille. The bad.
That's funny. So the first thing I ever saw Jeffrey Dean Morgan in was the Watchmen movie, where he's a bad guy in that too.
Really?
Yeah. Bad guy. He's an anti-hero.
Yeah.
The Watchmen. Have you seen The Watchmen?
Not in a long time.
Okay, it's basically like if heroes were real, they would be shitty people. It's like The Boys.
Oh, it's like The Boys. Yeah, okay.
Which I think The Boys exists because of Watchmen, to a certain degree.
Got to be.
But Jeffrey Dean Morgan played a hero named the Comedian.
Okay.
Who is one of my favorite characters because he's just so vile. But beloved because everybody in the public eye, he's a hero. But like he was doing war crimes in Vietnam, and like it was this big thing of like what heroes are. So like when he was that in The Watchmen, I thought he was great as Negan. I also read the comic books.
I can see that.
Yeah, Negan was way more brutal in the comic books, so they really toned him down for the TV show, which is crazy.
Yeah, I haven't read the comic books at all.
Yeah.
Okay, so I first saw him in Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah. Yeah. I figured.
We're all crying at the end when he dies. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, I love this guy. I love this character. And then to see him
as Negan,
it was like,
yeah.
No, I don't like it. Yeah.
It's crazy how perspectives can change like that, though.
It really is like what your first impression of somebody, and it just carries over, right?
Yeah, well, that's why a lot of actors, I guess, other than David Tennant and Matt Smith more recently, once you're a doctor, it's really hard for you to do other things because people just see you as the doctor.
Yeah.
But
right. I think it's the thing about like Doctor Who. It is fun to see new doctors come through and see what their new take will be on it.
Yeah.
But I mean, they've been on for 60 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you wonder how much originality can possibly
suck out of it,
be left.
Yeah. Because I like Peter Capaldi.
He was one of my favorites.
Yeah. He has my favorite episode of Doctor Who ever. Mm-hmm. So I know that they can do it.
Right.
Like you see glimpses of it, but it gets harder and harder to find those stars in all of space, something else that we were kind of talking about before the show started was like the zombie thing that I mentioned. Mm-hmm. If you do a new thing with a zombie, is that unique or is it still generic because it's zombie?
Right.
One of my favorite game series of all time is Dark Souls. Here in the last 5-6 months, 2 games have come out. Lies of P, which is like a Pinocchio game, and Lords of the Fallen. Both of them, I think, very original, but they play identically to Dark Souls.
Okay.
Is that original? Because the stories were very original. Like Lords of the Fallen had this amazing mechanic where you could switch between your world and what your world looks like in its mirror plane, like the underworld, where everything is more difficult and you can kind of... That's neat. That's really cool. Yeah. If your eyes are closed and if you're squinting, you're like, this is Dark Souls 1.
Yeah.
And then Lies of P plays almost identically to Bloodborne, which is another Dark Souls game. You squint your eyes, you're like, oh, is this Bloodborne? So are they original? The story's very unique, very gripping, very
So you mean
good.
just the gameplay part of it?
Yeah, it's like if you play Call of Duty and you play Battlefield.
Yeah.
There's 1 or 2 buttons that are different, but left trigger's still going to aim the gun, right trigger's still going to shoot.
Right. You walk in the room and somebody else is playing, you won't know.
Yeah. Yeah, you won't be able to tell the difference just by a quick glance because they play the same. Both very original stories. So where are people's lines of originality at?
I don't know. And it's we were talking about the League of Legends, the worlds that's going on right now. Mm-hmm. And I think it's their 14th year.
Something like that, yeah.
And so how it's almost like the originality has changed, not from necessarily the material, but how we're experiencing the material and how we're going, it's part of our lives. I don't think anybody would have imagined the following that people want to watch, right? And how it's grown from the very beginning to now. Mm-hmm. And I just think that's how some of the originality in video games has become, is how you can experience it differently now. Yeah.
Another crazy thing about League of Legends and a lot of these series that are almost legacy titles at this point, like StarCraft and stuff that's been around forever, or like Warhammer has been around for a very long time. They are now exploring new original concepts in other media. Because League of Legends had that Netflix show Arcane.
Yeah.
That was just
Arcane. Jesus.
Amazing.
That was so... The storyline, the visuals, everything, there's nothing I didn't like about it.
Yeah.
I wish they made more.
I think they are. I think season 2 is going to happen. And now they're doing spin-off games as well. Oh, wow. So the next League of Legends type title is, I can't remember his name. It's going to bother me. I hope you remember.
I'm bad at names.
In Arcane.
What's your name? I don't know.
Right. So in Arcane, do you remember the area that had the tree growing in the middle of it and they rode the hoverboards? Uh-huh. Who was the kid that was the leader of that group of people?
The actor or the character's name?
The character's name.
No idea.
That fought Jinx to hold her off for a
I can't remember at all.
Yeah. He is going to be a side-scrolling Castlevania style game that's featuring him. Oh. So they're exploring different things within the League of Legends universe,
lore, right? Yeah.
So that's also cool. But
I really like when they do that, because you're familiar with it. You don't have to be reintroduced to it.
Yeah. But it's a different way to experience this IP that you like.
Yeah. Like the House of Dragons.
Okay. That was the prequel
to Game of Thrones, right? It was so much easier to just dive right in because you had such a familiarity, and like the new Lord of the Rings too.
Yeah.
And so it's just this continuation or just a focus on a whole part of the story you didn't know. And it's just like looking at a picture closely, more closely, so you can find out more things. But it's just an easy way to jump in on it, and you feel like you know what's going on, but it still doesn't feel original because they're just building on the things that they built before. But I think they're just giving it to us in a different way. Yeah, and it's the story may not be original, but the way they're giving it to us, is.
It's more of like we're getting a bunch of remixes now. Yeah, it's like
I think people have been talking about this for centuries. Yeah. I mean, that's a famous Mark Twain quote, there's no original thought left. No. And I know he was such a critic of society, but I think for him, I think he would admit like his books are just, some of them are just derivatives of the other book. But when we push into this modern world, we're just doing the same thing, but we have so much access to stories. It feels like we're just repeating ourselves. Yeah,
because if you really want to get into the nitty gritty of like the originality thing, a lot of people are like, oh, Star Wars used to be so good in the 70s and stuff like that. If you look at what Star Wars parallels, it's basically just a retelling of like a classic hero story of the nobody that becomes the, like a very Odyssey style.
Space cowboy.
Yeah. So it's like, you're really nitpicking at just stuff that you like. So if you like it, that's great. If you don't have to shit on it for everybody else. Yeah.
But I think it's sometimes like I kind of get unique and original in my head, and they kind of go together. Right? Yeah. So something is very unique, then it looks original to me, but it's not exactly. It's just a different version of the same thing. Yeah. And so it's hard for me to not feel like it's fresh and new, even though down to brass tacks, the story is not original. Right. But I just think we've felt this way for a long time. That there's just so much more entertainment out there now.
Oh yeah, the sheer amount that you can consume. It's impossible to consume even at the rate that stuff is coming out. Yeah. Things are happening faster than you can physically take in what's happening.
Yeah, it's so overwhelming, and we're broken up now into these fandoms, right? And you feel like you're in a small community, then you discover you're this massive community, right? Yeah. But there's so much more to experience. And sometimes it just takes over your life. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, no, I totally understand.
Yeah. But. Like my son's been watching the League of Legends. So he's getting up at 1 a.m. to watch it. Well, sometimes I get home late, and so we'll just sit there and watch it together. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is so different than, you would go in sometimes a large, like a conference room or not an arena, but still to watch people play live on screen. But now I don't even know how many people are watching
esports are crazy now.
It's nuts. And so it's original in the delivery to me. That's why it feels so new. Yeah. And so I don't know, but it's an age-old question, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. But I think with that, we're going to get into part 2, where we're going to talk about
nerd culture
and where it's going. Yeah. Welcome to part 2, everybody, where we're going to be talking about how nerd culture has kind of changed over the last few decades. And you were telling me about a reunion that you went to.
Right. I went to my 30th high school reunion, and you do kind of gravitate to the people you knew, right? It's and you kind of assume they're the same the same person. So in high school, I was a jock, a band geek, a theater geek,
Okay.
and a closeted nerd. Because 30 years ago, you kind of really, not only did you in some ways hide how smart you were, but you had to hide the things that you loved, like in nerd culture. Like I loved Star Wars, Star Trek. We played endless games of Axis and Allies and Risk and then other strategy board games, right? But, I think we were talking about how we've aged as a nerd.
Yeah.
And so I found that really interesting to me, because my dad was also very nerdy in his own way, but for him it was nerdy about like nuclear engineering.
Okay.
When he was born in the 50s.
Yeah.
And they were nerdy about more obscure stuff that mostly wasn't in popular culture or mainstream culture at all.
I actually have a bit about how no matter what you like, it's nerdy. It's just nerdy got attributed to like Spider-Man and video games and stuff like that. But no matter what you know a ton about, whether it's like sports and stuff like that, it's nerdy. Like
That's what I mean.
If you can tell me the entire offensive line of your favorite team of 1992, guess what, buddy? That's the exact same as me being able to tell you when Captain America became Bucky and got his new suit. And
it's
the same
anything
stuff.
you're so obsessive about that an above average amount of information.
You're nerdy.
Right. And that's what I think being a nerd is as well. But, for him, that's what his experience was. It wasn't about what you liked. It was about how in depth you were getting. But it was also a bit of not shame, but like you had to keep it hidden because you didn't want to be picked on for how nerdy you were. But what I was talking about with my friend was, when did nerd culture go from being something you hid to
out in the open?
Out in the open. And
I think Tobey Maguire cracked the surface in 2001.
Yeah, I think it was the early 2000s and the late 90s, which is like just after I graduated and went to college, and you started to I just kind of decided to let it go.
Yeah.
Let the nerd side of me go.
Okay.
And and then I got married and I had kids and all this other stuff. But right around the 2000s, my kids were, toddlers. And they loved when Iron Man came out. They loved when Spider-Man came out. And I'd always loved comic books as a kid. And so it was something that we could do together, which to me is the essence of being a nerd. You're looking for your people, right?
Yeah.
And so that kind of struck me to watch it become more acceptable to be a nerd.
Yeah. Because when I was in elementary and middle school, I feel like that was the edge of when you could get picked on. Right. Because if you like the movies and stuff, that's fine. But if you're reading the comic books or you're playing Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, like you've lost touch with reality.
That's what. Yeah.
But then it was like X-Men and like like the more movies that came out, the more it was like there might be something to this.
Yeah.
That's pretty fun.
In the 90s, you started to see more nerdy characters. Like Urkel, right?
Oh yeah.
And they just playing into the stereotype, but he was lovable, right? And then one of the things that I think mainstream nerded out on was like Lost.
Okay. Oh my gosh, Lost.
Remember how obsessed we all were with Lost?
What
right?
a dumpster fire of a TV show. Like I've never loved.
Oh, I hated the end.
Yeah.
They jumped the shark.
Yeah.
And I wanted to die, but yeah. But still.
I've never loved and hated something so much.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah. So my girlfriend, she had never seen Lost. Okay. So last year was the first time she had ever seen anything about it. She didn't know anything. Like she knew that it was a thing that happened. So we sit down and basically from season 1 to, did it end in season 6, right? 6 seasons?
I think so.
Season 1, she was like, oh, I could see why everybody liked this.
Yeah.
And then season 2 happened. She's like, okay, it's getting like weirder, but there's still a lot of mystery. And this is season 3. She was like, okay, all right.
It felt like we were going to turn a corner after season. Yeah. Honestly, I thought this is where it gets better.
Yeah. And then season 4, she's like, I don't know where this is going. And then season 5, she's like, this how is this going to wrap up? And then it just doesn't.
And then it doesn't. They're like, fuck it. I don't care anymore.
It was just because we like shotgunned it. Because I watched it. I started watching Lost, I think at about season 3 or 4. So like I had to catch up and then was watching it episodically. We just shotgunned it in like a month. Yeah. So it was like in real time watching her just like go from excited like puppy to be like.
All the emotions I felt over 6 years was condensed into a month.
Yeah. It's so funny. She would get so mad. It would be the end of an episode, and she's like, "I don't even know how I watched this. I don't even know what's going." That completely just contradicts. Like she would get so fired.
You can't stop. That's the problem.
It's
with
so
it.
funny. I guess here's a question for you: who was your favorite Lost character?
I love Sawyer.
Okay, cool.
I like a little black and gray morality.
Yeah.
Character, yeah.
For me, it was a tie. It was John Locke.
Yeah.
Before all the bullshit with John Locke.
I did like how mysterious his character was, and how zen-like in some ways, but
I liked that he grounded the spirituality of the show.
Yeah.
Because everybody is fighting on the whole, like, we're trapped on an island, we got to get home, and we got to do this. He was the first character that gave you hints as to, like, this man didn't have functioning legs.
Right.
And now, like, it added that sense of, like, okay, what is going on here? And then he's the reason the show kind of jumped the shark. And then Sawyer is my second favorite. Yeah. By far.
Kate...
She was the worst. Just the worst.
The worst. It's like...
I hated Jack, too, though.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand Jack.
Well, I actually think that was the actor's fault.
Yeah.
but every time Kate would come in the scene, before she would even talk, I was like,
yeah.
She's the worst. I can't handle it. But that was the first time I had seen everybody get obsessed with the show. And there was chat rooms about it, and there was every newspaper was printing theories about Lost. And, people I thought were really opposite of me in personality were obsessed with Lost. And I thought it's nice that we can all nerd out
on something.
And that was like my first glimmer of hope. I'm like, maybe I can come out of the closet now. And
you want to hear a fun fact about Lost? So, like tabloids and stuff like that, how they were pretty much dying out.
Yeah.
The reason that tabloids became just astronomical in like every grocery store and stuff like that is because of 2 shows. Lost, because everybody wanted to know what was happening with the actors and all the drama with the guy that was playing Jack and all this stuff, and John and Kate plus 8.
Shut up.
Those 2 shows saved tabloid like newspapers and stuff because everyone
was it worth it?
No.
Let them die.
Yeah.
I fucking hate those things.
Because of the drama from those 2 shows, basically tabloid newspapers were saved in the early 2000s. I just think that's hilarious.
That's so bizarre. I never would have guessed that.
Yeah, but I watched like an hour documentary on it. It was like I got to the hour at the end, and I was like, I just watched an hour documentary about John and Kate plus 8 and Lost saving tabloids.
So people need to, rewatch all of Lost and then watch that documentary. Yeah.
But
there were so many things about Lost that
it was crazy.
People nerded out on, and to now, it's practically. If you go to Gen Con or Comic Con or whatever, it's literally tens of thousands of nerds letting their freak fly. Yeah. Right? There's no,
and it's marvelous.
Right? It is absolutely marvelous because it's like you felt like we were there all this time, and until we banded together, to have a common experience, we were hidden, and we didn't have a way to connect.
Yeah, which it's funny because Gen Con's been around for decades.
Yeah.
But the mass appeal of it in the last decade is on a whole different level.
Right.
Like it's phenomenal. It's one of my favorite things ever. I do have a question about your class reunion thing.
Yeah.
How you actually went to it?
I did.
How many people / how many other people did you think, oh, they turned out as expected, or you're like, holy shit, this is a different human?
I would say almost everybody turned out as I expected. Really? Yeah.
I've never been to a class reunion. For me, I graduated high school in 2013. And I just got like my decade, like 10 years.
Yeah.
Not going to go. I have zero interest in meeting any of those people again.
I went to the 5-year, which I was like, do we need a 5-year?
Yeah.
And then I just stopped going.
Yeah.
Because it's so soon after. And you're just like, of course we're the same people.
Yeah.
We were.
How big was the school you went to?
I went to Pike High School.
Okay.
And at the time, our class was like 350.
Gotcha. I had a graduating class of like 54. It was like very small.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like then my son, when he graduated a few years ago, I think it was almost 1,000. But so it's still small enough that we kind of knew each other.
Yeah.
You know, and especially I got to hang out with so many different groups between jocks and bands and theater and whatever. So I felt like I knew a lot of people. The one thing I discovered about in that high school reunion that I didn't expect was what people thought of me, because I've just suffered from I don't give a fuck what you think about me. Yeah. So I never paid attention. But I really thought I was this nerdy, because I was a good student and I liked nerd culture, and I was just doing, I was the drum major.
I was the drum major in my high school too. Yeah.
So
what instrument did you play?
I played the clarinet and the saxophone.
Okay, right on. Nice.
Yeah, but I was such a music geek, right? That like my senior year, we had 7 classes and 5 of them were music, between show choir and
that's cool.
Jazz band and all this other stuff. So I just thought,
I loved music.
I do. I love it. I still not play. I play the piano and guitar now, but
nice.
I have to have it in my life. But I really thought that's why that was my identity. And
same, like Tootsie. I played French horn. And
right.
then in marching band, I played mellophone. In pep band, I played the guitar. In jazz band, I played the trumpet. So I was like, I was in all of it. I was like balls deep in all the music stuff.
There's no way that wasn't my identity, right? Yeah. That's what I thought. And so I kept I was talking to different people, and they're like, because I went to school and I became an engineer and a physicist. And I thought, well, that's exactly who I was, right? Well, then when I went and I told them, it's like, oh yeah, I quit my job so I can work on becoming a stand-up comic. And they're like, yeah, that's predictable. I'm like, what?
Really?
What are you talking about? It's predictable. They're like, well, you were one of the coolest people in school. It just turns out that you would do something crazy like that. And I'm like, I was cool in school? There's no way. I didn't believe it. And I just asked other people, I'm like, did you really think? Yeah. They're like, oh yeah, definitely. You were like one of the coolest people in school. I was like, never. I'll never believe that. And
I don't have the slightest idea what people would have thought of me.
No, I mean, it took 30 years, right? And but that's when we started talking about nerd culture. I'm like, I'm such a nerd. How on earth? They go, it makes you even cooler now because nerd culture is cool again, right? And I don't know. It got my mind thinking about like what part of nerd culture did I let go of, and then what part did I pick back up? Yeah. And it's different things, Did you enjoy high school? I always ask. I always like to know that answer from people. I would say half and half. Yeah. I hated it. I liked everything I did. I hated school. I hated I didn't like the way teachers talked to us. Like they talked down to us, even though, you're in the AP classes or whatever. And I didn't like the clickiness and the petty, useless waste of energy shit like that. And I'm like, I'm here to work, and I even felt that way like in theater. Okay. I'm like, yeah, we can all go hang out and drink or whatever. I'm like, yeah, but we're here to work, let's get it done. And that's the only thing I kept from high school. This is gonna sound super nerdy, but I kept my calendar book. So I could remind myself, like we had 7 a.m. soccer practice and had, 8 a.m. theater practice and then practice all the way to 10 o'clock at night.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's what I loved about it. But but apparently I was cool. There's no way. No, that's not possible. But when we started talking about, nerd culture and things like that, it really was, how did we go from it being super closeted in the 50s, somewhat stigma attached to it, and it had, I think it was movies and video games. It had to be movies and video games, right? Because that is what mass appeal is. Yeah, like going and seeing a movie in a movie theater is so many degrees easier than going to a comic book shop,
looking through the comics, finding a hero that you might think is interesting, you know, or getting a deck of cards for Magic the Gathering or Dungeons and Dragons. Like, there's so many more barriers to getting into nerd things, but now
it's so easy. And with the internet, right, really exploding in the 2000s, if you wanted to nerd out about a particular character or video game, you're going to find your people out there on the internet, right? And, you know, I think even when that wasn't, your circle was pretty small.
Yeah.
Your circle of the people you knew at high school, and maybe the people you would meet if you would go to these gaming events or whatever. But
I talked to 2 people in high school, and I'm no longer friends with one of them. But me and my buddy Jacob, thick as thieves still. Outside of that, I don't even know if I could tell you half of their names.
I mean, I see 1 or 2 people from high school.
Yeah.
And but I don't hang out with them. I keep track of them on Facebook because I'm that old and I'm on Facebook. But I don't really, and I'm not good with names. And when you're a drum major of like 150 kids every year for 3 years, there's people who know my name and I don't remember. Yeah. I just made them do push-ups and that was it.
Yeah. I think being drum major was my favorite part of high school.
Yeah.
I think overwhelmingly my favorite part was being drum major of my band. It was so much fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved jazz band too.
Yeah. Jazz band was fun.
Yeah.
Like, I did music theory. I think if I saw the people that I graduated with, I would seem like such a different human now.
You think so?
I think so. I think if people were wondering, because I wasn't a good student. Like, I was a nerd when it comes to like comic books and stuff. Yeah. My grades were dog shit. Like, C's get degrees was like my motto.
Right.
I spent more time calculating what it took to not fail than actually study. I was a horrible student. I felt like school was such a waste of my time.
Yeah.
Like, and I went to college. I have a college degree in accounting. I hated all of that too. But I was very much just kind of a shithead. Like, I wasn't actively mean to people, but it was like, I don't want to do any of this. I've got my friends, leave me alone. Yeah. Being drum major in band was really the only time that I kind of like branched out.
Right.
And I'm so different now. Like, almost 180-degree flip as a human.
So do you think you're nerdier now than you were back then?
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
Big time. It wasn't until college that I started to get into like Dungeons and Dragons. I liked the superhero stuff. I liked Captain America was always my favorite hero, and Spider-Man. But starting in college was when it went deep, like Dungeons and Dragons and all this other kind of stuff. And I'm even nerdier now because now I play Magic the Gathering, and like I literally created a show called Nerdnews. Like me and my buddy Tyson have a once a month Dungeons and Dragons live show. Like we are creating an identity around this culture.
But it to me it feels like home because you're finding your people, you're finding your community, and that's what I love about nerd culture is how welcoming it can be. It can be. It can be dog shit.
It can be very toxic,
especially with the anonymous internet or whatever. Right? I mean, when some female gamers use voice altering shit just so they don't get picked on, that's bull. Right?
It's pretty wild.
And so I think that's insanely over the top. But I think it's such a welcoming. It can be such a welcoming place. You're different. Who cares?
Yeah. And the funny thing about nerdom is gaming, I would say, has the worst rap. Because I've never been to a D&D table or like Gen Con or Magic the Gathering where that level of, I don't want to say disgust, but like attack, like offense towards a female. I've never seen that.
I don't know why.
I think it's because gamer guys get such a stigma for being like the incel and the do you ever see the sun, that they're mean about it. I think that's kind of what happened with it. Yeah. But I think guys are just excited to see a lady in a comic book shop that it's like, oh, please play with us.
Right. Well, I have 2 sons, right? And sometimes when they started playing, I was like, yeah, maybe this stuff is too macho or masculine, and it's gonna draw some bad characters. But they're not that way. And but the way they even treat each other, not even girls, just each other. I'm like, how many times can we say you're a pussy in 1 hour? Like if you scroll,
that's brothers. Though.
And I'm like, okay, well, they play with their cousins too, so they're playing with all family.
Yeah,
and so I'm like, you guys are gonna see each other this weekend. How can you look each other in the face? Like it's all good fun. And I'm like, oh, okay, but I just thought it was funny that like when I dropped nerd culture for so long, and then it was my own kids that drew me back in. It wasn't even friends wanting to get together and play board games or whatever, because all those people were gone, right? So it's like you lose as you get older. If you don't hang on to your friends, it's easy to let them go. So I didn't even have an outlet, but I find it funny how 30 years later I'm probably just as nerdy about things, if not more, than I was in high school. So.
I think the line is it can't be your entire personality. I think where people fall apart is if that's the only thing that you've got. So like we were talking before, I've got a bow hanging behind me right now. Like I love hunting and archery and like camping and outdoor things, and I also like nerdy stuff. Do I like the nerdy stuff more? Yeah, it's a bit more accessible. I can do it daily and stuff. But I feel like if it's your only thing, that's where personalities start to fall apart. And I don't want to say dangerous because that sounds cliche. I'm not out here being like, games are going to make you violent.
Right.
But you got to have some balancing factor, whether it's friends or family or something to kind of get you out of there a little bit. But one of the reasons I love the 80s so much is because one of my first ever video games when I was like 10 or 11 was Grand Theft Auto Vice City.
Oh, right.
Because I tricked my grandma into thinking it was a racing game.
My sons would do that too. Because I'd be like, well, what's it about? What's it rated or whatever? And they had a whole story, like Call of Duty, right? Like, it's really patriotic. It's going to show you what life is like in the military. And I'm like, okay. So my dad was in the military. I'm like, you need to know that.
Meanwhile, it's like, pussy.
And I'm like, we walk in. You walk in later and you're like, what is going on? But I think what I think about like the future of nerd culture is it feels unlimited. Like there's, to me, all the crossover between like pro athletes that are now coming out and saying, "Oh, I love D&D and I love nerd culture." And The Rock plays D&D, and
there was an article a few months ago about I think it was either a baseball or a football player that just sold a Pokemon card that he collected.
Right.
And it was like, this Pokemon card sold for what like 1 year of me and my sport is. Love Pokemon.
Oh my
God. That's amazing.
It's amazing how it's almost like a badge of honor now for these guys like Vin Diesel, right? Who's just an action hero and all this other stuff, but the fact that he loves to play D&D.
Yeah, he made a movie off his shitty D&D character.
But it's like when are we gonna? I'm just interested to see when there's going to be inevitably an oversaturation.
I think it's now.
You think we're getting close?
We're right on the cusp.
Yeah.
Because right now there's so much that we've so hyper-focused our own niches.
Yeah.
That, like in the first part where we were talking about like what's original anymore, people are shitting on other people's things for just the slightest differences, right? Like when I went to Gen Con, there were people like, I wanted to try Vampire the Masquerade. I thought that sounded like a good tabletop. My favorite RPG is Monster of the Week. But the amount of like cross-table shit talk that was in good fun, but you could tell that there was a piece to it.
Yeah, between games.
It's like, literally, we're both rolling dice. You're talking about vampires. I'm talking about werewolves.
Right.
Come on, buddy. Like, what are we doing here? Like, what?
You think it's polarization that?
I think so.
Yeah. It's that would be sad because I feel like people can nerd out and be in the same nerd community and they're vastly different backgrounds.
No.
Political or religious beliefs. That's what I think is great about nerd culture. Yeah. But I have wondered where something is going to break this up again and it will be reinvented again. And I don't know what that is, but
I think it's VR. I was thinking about this. What scares me the most about nerdom is where VR is going. Because I love VR, but it's so scary.
Is is it? It feels like it's ebb and flowing. I mean, like we were talking about, or I mentioned that the Activision and the Microsoft merger. I mean, when they first had that idea, it was because they thought VR was the future.
Yeah, I still think it is.
And it is, but it's not developing as fast as I thought it was going to.
Yes and no. Right now, it's not developing and getting better super fast because they're taking what it is now and making it more accessible to more people.
Yeah.
So I think once, and honestly, Meta with like Facebook and stuff have kind of got the biggest leap on it. Once they figure out how to get it to a price point to where Joe Schmo can get it, they're pretty close. For $500, you can have a self-contained VR set. Yeah. They're getting there. It's just right now people are still picking PlayStation or Xbox over a VR set. But I think I'm not trying to get political with COVID or anything like that. But the reason that it started to scare me is because during lockdown, there's literally communities of people that, because of the fears of COVID and everything, have now basically have virtual lives. Like it used to be chat, like VR chat, I think is what it was called. Yeah, literally VR chat, where you create an avatar and then it dumps you into this world where you just talk to people and you're hanging out in a virtual space. The amount of people that got addicted to that because they couldn't go outside and just stayed in that community. Like, there's a documentary about it, actually, where people were getting married in VR and never seeing each other. Like, I think once they make it more consumer friendly, VR is going to be devastating for people that are already having a hard time socializing.
Do you think it's more isolating? Because it feels like the opposite of what they're trying to sell us, like what Meta is trying to sell us. You're in the community and you're meeting new people, but it sounds like you think it's isolating to be.
I think it fucks with your brain.
Oh, okay.
I think it's a situation where you're getting, I don't want to say artificial, because I've got friends that I met online that I'm good friends with, but when you have no incentive to seek out actual interaction,
right,
it becomes dangerous. Because if something happens and you lose any point of that connectivity, you're losing everything. Yeah. Like right now, as we're recording this, my internet went out. Okay. So if my entire life was virtual or VR chat or whatever, I'm completely cut off from everybody for X amount of time. I think it can mess with you to be like, yeah, I'm connected with these people, but since you're not getting that human interaction, you're not, hugging your friend, you're not grabbing a beer with your buddy, you're still in your home in the same four walls. I think it's going to be a certain level of people that are just going to start like breaking down to a certain degree, because it gets scary when you're not in the sun.
Right. I mean, I think that's one thing I noticed after COVID is like some way social norms also shifted,
exploded.
And I thought it's just me, like I'm just an old person and I think everything sucks, but that's not why. But I think we were so alone for so long, and we went out in public and we're like, how do we even function again, with each other? We had to relearn how to even have a conversation with a stranger in some ways. And
I lost friends over COVID stuff because I couldn't sit in my house any longer. Like I had a group of friends that I knew that we were only hanging out with each other, because like just trying to play it as safe as possible. It was just like the same 5 people in Indianapolis, right? And we would still hang out as often as we could, or people felt comfortable. But it's like, I just couldn't. I couldn't just sit in my house. Phone calls or Zoom and all that shit wasn't cutting it for me. So like there's a certain level of people that have a hard time handling that. But if you're not seeing another human face for long periods of time on end.
Oh, God, yeah.
Especially when it comes to working from home now. Because some people are working from home, so they're on their computer, and then they log out of work, and then they hop on the VR or the whatever, and all their interactions are online on top of all their work is online. They get their groceries delivered to them. My conspiracy brain is like, this is messing people up.
Well,
like, this is really messing with people.
And I think that those kinds of industries have convinced us that we don't need it, right? They're like, hey, it's all in the advertiser. Like, you can stay in, I'll bring you the groceries will come, meals will come, everything comes to your door so quickly. And it is, I could see that risk. I hadn't really thought about that because I like VR, I like the Oculus, but it's just fun to play the games and things like that. It's not. I'm not gonna go on. I don't even know what it's called. The
VR chat.
Where you live your whole life, like the metaverse.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even.
It doesn't sound appealing to me.
It doesn't
at all.
Right. I've been thinking about what's the future. I hadn't really thought about VR at all.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing: how long have you been doing comedy for?
This is month 11.
Okay, so you're not even quite at a year yet.
No.
I started comedy during COVID.
Oh, gosh.
Like, my first ever comedy set was March 12th or 15th or something like that of 2020. Yeah. And then within 2 weeks, I was laid off from my job and the world shut down.
Yeah.
Now, in 2023, if you took all that away from me again, I would go crazy. I would lose my mind. Like seeing all my comic friends doing shows and the live shows and the D&D. If all that just disappeared again.
Because it's probably more social than you were before COVID.
By leaps and bounds. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know how many people can handle another one of those situations.
So I would, what's interesting to me, so like, I did start comedy last July. And it was almost the culture shock that made. I only did it for a month, and I stopped doing it for 6 months.
Okay.
Because I was like, wow, these people are a lot.
Do you count that in your 11-month time?
No.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I just cut it out.
For sure.
But that's what I mean. It's like, I'm like, God, these people are a lot. And
no,
going from being an engineer and a physicist to being with
degenerates,
it's right. Well, you train yourself to have the engineer mentality. Like you're more steady. You're not emotive. You don't smile.
I was an accountant. I totally understand.
No, you get it, right? Yeah. And so it's like after 15 years, it's like beat into you. And I was a leader, right? So they people would even be like, you've got to school yourself. You're a leader now. And I'm like, okay, so you're literally telling me to stop being who I am. Yeah. And I'm fairly extroverted, right? But even then, when I started going to mics, I was like, wow, these people are a lot, right? And I can talk to any stranger, but some people, like when I would talk to them, they were very willing to tell me everything that they could possibly tell me in 5 minutes. And it's
a lot of intimacy deprived people. Might be a good way to put it.
A little bit. And so that's why, and I got busy at the wood shop too, which was also the reason, but I was like, this is and it's hard. Comedy's hard. So I had unreasonable expectations completely, right? And then, so I was like, I'm good with this. I'm not going to do it anymore. But then what was interesting to me was I started to miss it, and I started to read about how to be a comedian and all this other stuff. And so I felt like...
So you read comedy books.
I read books. And
me too.
I ended up watching... I'll pick a comic and I'll watch them all week.
Okay.
Right? And so I was doing that before I came back in February. And so that made me miss it. But it also clearly made a path in comedy for me in my mind. Like this is how it goes. And maybe it'll take 7 years before you're headlining somewhere, or, a few years before you feature or whatever. So that was good to know. Yeah. Whereas, so I think that's what, that personality, remembering I could be who I am, as opposed to who, and even like talking about nerd culture, there's no way I'm going to tell all the engineers,
Oh yeah.
Right. Some of the things I'm into, right? Whereas, when you're forced to conform, I think that's
what makes it tough.
It makes it tough. And so it was hard going from that culture to comedy, to learn how to be a human again. I think somebody at an open mic called me out. They're like, do you ever smile? And I'm like, oh, I forgot I'm not at work. I can actually be emotive and talk to strangers, and people won't think that's strange. But
see, I used to get in trouble at work because I can't really hold it back. So I would be an accountant and stuff. And
I was always getting in trouble.
Yeah, people would ask me a question, and I'd be like, I would say something, and then next thing you know,
my mouth was getting me in trouble for sure. And I had these mentees, and this one girl, we were at lunch. This is the first time I met them, and I was like, where do you see? What are your plans, right? And she literally sounded like this, and she goes, okay, first I'm going to work at this job for like a couple of years, and then I'm going to go find a real job. And then by the time I'm 28, I'm going to meet the man of my life, and then we're going to get married. And by 30, we'll have 2 kids and whatever. And I've had such a transient life, right? So I laughed. I literally, like you just did, I laughed in her face. And I said,
it's not going to happen.
I said, it's like, I'm glad you have a plan. And you have a direction, and that's what I was asking. What's your plan and direction? But there's no freaking way it's gonna happen on a timetable.
No.
And I watched her little baby lip like quiver, and then she started crying.
That's not a good thing.
And that was the last time they let me have young female engineers.
Yeah,
because I just it's like
I'm a realist to the point of almost pessimist.
Right.
So whenever somebody says, "Hey, this is what's going to happen," I'm like, "You can try."
Yeah.
Like I feel like because I'm 28 now, I genuinely feel like the last 8 to 9 years of my life has just been fighting to the next day so it doesn't fall apart. Like that's how every day feels to me. Is like, I don't know what's going to happen, but shit, I'm going to try and get over there. And then you just try and go that way. Like,
I totally believe you head in a direction, but you can't plan out. I mean, I didn't go back to school till I was 28.
Oh yeah.
And I was like world's oldest intern.
Yeah.
After that, but I always just go with my gut. I mean, we were in the circus for Pete's sake, right? My husband and I. So it's like you just go with what feels right, as long as you're headed towards the direction
you want to go.
Yeah, and so, but I think I am like too realistic sometimes. And
no, I agree.
I have a smart mouth, which I'm constantly trying to control.
Yeah, I got a smart mouth and a dumb brain, and it's gotten me here. So
yeah.
But yeah, anything else to?
No, I think that's. Yeah, I'm excited to see what's next for nerds, but I'm a little afraid.
Yeah, same.
I'm a little afraid too. So
thank you everybody for watching. This has been Nerd News, and Val, where can people find you?
You can find me at val.werner.comedy. That's my handle on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, all the same handle.
Cool, right on. This has been Nerd News. We've got a Monster event coming up Wednesday, November 1st at Planet of the Tapes in Louisville, and we've got some shows coming up in Indianapolis, so check out our website or here on YouTube. We'll do all the announcements or anywhere that you follow us. So thanks, everybody.